Hello and namaskar.
नमस्कार, नमस्कार।
My heartiest greetings to all the wonderful spectators who dedicatedly visit our Sunday 7 p.m. Sheetalnath Conversations show. And I'm really delighted to have your presence, to find your presence repeatedly on every Sunday evening. Welcome to yet another show of enriching experience, a paddle through the gigantic ocean of reminiscence at our backyard, our beautiful anecdotes of aroma, of fragrance, of joy, of bonhomie, of brotherhood, of knowledge, the wonderful enchanting resonance that echoes around and brings back the memory of our roots. It's a recall to the roots, recall of the roots, and also craving of the soul to connect to the roots. Our uninterrupted Sunday shows surely are glimpse of the wonder cradle of Indian civilization, uh, Kashmir, that is as ancient as the coronation of our queen, first queen, Yashomati of Kashmir, who was coronated by none other than Lord Krishna 5,000 years ago. And she was the first women queen, women empress of the universe. And this is a wonderful land, a land of wonderful people bestowed with the great bounties of nature, of birds, flora and fauna, of peaks, of pilgrimage, wonderful people, hustle and bustle. And we had very great ancient masters, great masters of science, spiritual sciences, and mathematics, of yogic sciences, many of whom have traveled to the as far as areas as the Caspian Sea, to the Siberia, up to the Siberia, China, and we have all these signs still preserved. They have traveled for the purpose of giving something of our wisdom of Kashmir to the universe, and many things like even our spirituality had traveled to these places, and it was colored in their cultures at Sufism in some places, and in some places our forms and our forms and symbols, our iconography has also traveled. So this program is in a way a tribute to this great civilization, a recapitulation of this entire uh, bygone stories, shades of our civilization, and about the culture, about the art, about the men and matters, about the people. And this has been a very wonderful journey altogether. And we can see that there is a lot of adoration of this program around, and certainly I'm indebted and grateful to the all wonderful spectators who have been devoted, who are the followers of this program, who admire this program. Sunday after Sunday, they are glued to this program. They are the great strength of this program. And this program, probably, they have become the indelible, permanent constituents of this program, consorts of Sheetalnath Conversation, mosaic. And certainly, we have been bringing along the great laurels, luminaries, great personalities of great knowledge, wonderful integrity, wonderful visions, wonderful insights. They're very eminent personalities who came along and decorated all these wonderful shows, authored all these wonderful shows with a with a very peculiar and a very wonderful, beautiful dimensions, beautiful spectacle, which has been loved by all. And they have been able to catapult the entire scenic understanding, entire wisdom, entire memory, entire reminiscence, entire witness, and recaptured it in front of us through their memory, through their wisdom, through their graphic and intelligence. Continuing with this tradition, today we are again bringing back a wonderful personality, one of the tallest living legend of Kashmir, one of the greatest authority, one of the distinctive authority, Dr. Shashishekhar Toshkhani ji, who's a very,
My
very,
dear.
who's a very respectable author, a very renowned author, who is a, I mean, this cultural historian and a literary critic, linguist, poet, translator, and whatnot. He has authored many books on the Kashmiri culture and Kashmiri Pandits, and he has translated great works of Dinanath Nadim, Nundarish, Akhtar Mayuddin, and even the Bandpather of this Motilal Sakiji, the great Padam Shri theatrist of our state. And he has been awarded and rewarded at many places. His amazing papers have been, he has read those papers across the great prestigious destinations of the world and the country. And those papers are very peculiar and very respectful, and they are being spoken in different parts of the country, and they are about the statics, about the people, about the history, and other dimensions of all these things. So I think we must take this opportunity now to welcome this great son of a soil, this great personality, legend, one of the living legend of Kashmir, Shri Shashishekhar Toshkhani ji, into our studio.
Oh, thank you.
Shashishekhar ji, you are
Uh,
welcome into 39th Sheetalnath Conversation Show. Swagatam.
Thank you, Jugal Kaulji, for your kind words. But I am at a stage of my life when
Okay.
there's nothing before me, and I have only to look back at my past.
Oh,
So
that's good.
things are like that. But Lalleshwari has been, I've been allured and I have been fascinated by her verses from the beginning. So I said, let me say something about her, because there are many things that are said about her and many things that have been left unsaid. Mostly things have been left unsaid because people assess her and evaluate her according to their own predilections. I organized this seminar on Lalleshwari in 2000 with the help of
We'll,
Mr.
we'll come to Laleshwari because that is the
No, no,
main thrust
I'm
area.
just, I'll talk about myself also. I said that
Uh,
I'm very
yes, yes,
happy that
please.
I am to speak on this subject because this has
Okay,
fascinated me from the very beginning. So
thank
if
you.
you want to, I don't know what I have achieved. I don't think that I have many achievements, many feathers in my hat. But whatever little I have done, I think it's not so. I don't think I'm worthy of all that.
No, no, sir, no. You are. I mean, I can see since yesterday I put an ad. People respect you so much for your work, and it is really your magnanimity that you came and took a time to come to Sheetalnath Conversations and talk about Laleshwari as well as your life. To begin with, first of all, we'll come to the Laleshwari is a great topic. It fascinates me also very much. But today it's a great privilege that we have a personality like you, whose vast experience of scholarly work is all testimony. His whole life is testimony to this work. We'd like to have some glimpse of this. It's not possible to, I mean, to contain all body of work, that enormous body of work, in just 1.5 hour program. But then again, we like to try to touch some essences of your essence of your life, and also talk about Laleshwari a bit. First of all, I would like to say that you were born to a great father, Sri SK, Professor SK Toshkhani Saab. He was a very great, equally great, I mean, scholar of his times, a writer, and an authority on culture, authority on language, and authority on history. He was a very well acclaimed personality, and his contribution was immense. It might have been a great thing to be born under such a great banyan tree, and it must have been very nourishing. And I would like to know about that great gentleman, And after that, certainly I would like to know about where you were born, what was the climate, environment of that place, how were the people around, your siblings, your infancy days. So kindly elucidate, sir.
My father, Professor S.K. Toshkhani, was a philosopher. He was a professor of philosophy at Emerson College and SP College. He was a scholar, a linguist, and also an ardent follower of J. Krishnamurti.
Arey,
So,
wow, he's also my
so yeah,
favorite.
he was much ahead of his times, and see, he would be very witty and very um, was very witty whenever he would be asked some questions. But as a more than that, he has done a lot for women's education in Kashmir. He established the Women's Welfare Trust, perhaps I think in the early 1930s, with the help of Pandit Aftab called Nizamat. He was its first founder president. And this trust, you see, established several schools, including the Vasanta School.
Oh,
There are some people who say that that Vasanta school was established by Annie Besant. Annie Besant came there, but Vasanta school is named after my elder sister, eldest sister, Vasanta, who is unfortunately no more with us now. So he
oh,
established several schools, and the trust helped in spreading education in even in language, even mother tongue. In Kashmiri, he wrote several books for teaching women,
okay.
several textbooks including mathematics in Kashmiri. Imagine
My
a textbook
goodness,
on mathematics, on geography, on sciences.
it's very amazing.
Apart from this alphabet and see, a primer of Kashmiri language and all that. This was in all this in Kashmiri. He introduced, and these small books were taught in the schools run by the Women's Welfare Trust. Women Welfare Trust also helped this women who were widows and other women. He helped to teach them some various skills, and for that also it ran an institute called Seva Sadan. At Seva
Namaste.
Sadan, they taught them various skills. So all this was done by my father because he saw that the condition of women in Kashmir was very, very pathetic. So he not only he established the Women's Welfare Trust, the first very film in Kashmiri was produced by him, was written by him on the condition of Kashmiri women. And it also touched the subject of widow marriage. But there was tremendous opposition. There was a backlash by
Ramchand Kak, Ramchand Kak had something to
conservative
do.
elements. There are in every society, and in our society those days there were more conservative elements than progressive ones. So there was a backlash and there was much criticism, and the thing went to the then Prime Minister, Mr. Wakefield, who did not allow the film to be shown.
Oh,
The film was produced, everything was done. For my father took a long time and took much pains and went from place to place and to make it a very, very impressive film on the condition of pitiable
women.
condition of Kashmiri women, but it was not shown. So, and
My
not only that, my father was punished for it. For
Oh,
he was a professor of philosophy at SPA and college and Emerson College, and for 2 years he was demoted as headmaster
my goodness, my goodness.
because he did something which did not suit the Kashmiri Pandits with their regressive outlook, their backward
Conservative.
outlook. It didn't, you see, but my father was very much interested in the welfare of Kashmiri women. So he did not, there were many, the actors were Kashmiri.
Acha.
There were many actors, all those who acted in the film, they were Kashmiri, and my father was the main, character. He spoke about everything, and it was a sort of a documentary. This,
Documentary, documentary
so
drama.
it was a good film. I have not seen it much before my birth, but he was had to suffer a lot because of the film. And apart from the film, he did other things for Kashmiri women also. He wrote the very first novel in Kashmiri on Kashmiri women and on their condition, particularly about their being uneducated. He was very particular that Kashmiri women must be educated. The government did not pay any attention those days on women's education. In fact, what to talk of women, even men were most of the male population of Kashmir was not educated. The literacy percentage was very low. So, but the women were totally excluded, and he thought that, and then they suffered in private life also. Not only violence against them, but they were deprived of all rights.
Naturally,
They were deprived of
education.
so much so that even hospitals were forbidden for some women.
My goodness.
So why
That's
should
a
a woman go to hospital? Something is wrong. So this was the kind of thinking that prevailed till the missions, Christian missionary doctors, Dr. Neve and others came. This was the
very,
condition.
very keen. Yeah.
So he wrote the first very novel called Leela.
It
And
was
in
an
this Leela, Leela
Devanagari
was
script.
the title of the book.
Devanagari script.
No, yeah, he wrote it in Devanagari script.
Okay.
And he was a linguist also. You are talking of Devanagari. He made certain amendments in the Devanagari script so that Kashmiri vowels and Kashmiri sound could be represented in it.
All right.
And it
Wow.
was in this very script that the books that were studied at the Women's Welfare Trust schools were written. And this script was afterwards followed by, adapted by people like Masters in the Call, who was a good friend of his. Masters in the
Master.
Call and others, and even Ishwar Kaul and others, they, and even Grierson used the script afterwards. So this was the script she devised for Kashmiri, and this was the first time that Kashmiri was written. It was not written even in Persian except for Bible, which was written and translated in 1821 by this college at Calcutta, Sridampur, Calcutta. The missionaries, she translated it into both the scripts. But they also translated into Sharda script, and a font was Sharda font was prepared. But soon, since there were very few people who possessed that Bible, that font was destroyed, and Sharda script also had a setback at that time. But in Devanagari script, my father made the initiative. Master Sindhakal's famous, well-known book. It was again a pioneering work by Master Sindhakal on Paramanand. Nobody knew on Paramanand. And Master Sindhakal, she wrote the book in all the three scripts, Devanagari and Persian and the Roman script. And so far as the Devanagari script was concerned, he adapted the diacritical marks devised by my father. There were several diacritical marks needed for the vowels because Kashmiri vowels are a bit difficult to pronounce. There are actually seven Kashmiri vowels that Kashmiri has, which Devanagari does not have. And there are also some consonant sounds like sir and
Sir,
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 which
sir, sir,
Devanagari did not
sir.
have. So he devised diacritical marks for those also. He was very deeply in love with his mother tongue, so that without any funding, without any guidance, without any help, he went to Gilgit in the early 1930s to
Wow.
study the relationship between the Dardik Shina language and Kashmiri, and he
Arey,
wrote about it. He wrote a paper on this thing afterwards. You see, and then so far as linguistics is concerned, he had people like Dr. Siddheshwar Verma as his guru. Dr.
oh,
Siddheshwar Verma, and he also worked with great linguists like Turner. Turner produced that famous dictionary of Indo-Aryan languages.
foreign language,
He was Turner was a great linguist, and in
linguist.
that dictionary, hundreds and thousands of Kashmiri words were introduced with the help of my father.
Great.
There was another Polish lady also who called herself Sita Devi. She also brought out a sort of a thesaurus in English. She was a Polish woman, but she lived in India and she was a friend of my father's. So she also produced, and she was also helped by my father so far as sentences in Kashmiri were concerned. So he was a linguist also, and he tried to bring some reform the Devanagari script itself and brought out a tract known as Saral Devanagari, but
Saral.
it was not readily accepted by people, so he left that. But afterwards, you see, unfortunately, my elder brother, who was just 24, passed away. And so
Oh,
my father slowly had to withdraw himself from public life and such activities. But still, he continued to be active insofar as linguistics and other fields are concerned, and also culture. All that I have got, much of what I have got, you see, this interest in linguistics and in Kashmiri culture, he brought out two small booklets on Krishnaju Razdan.
Arey, wow. Krishnji
Two
Razdan,
small,
very
called,
fascinating.
the books were titled, the booklets were
Culture
titled
deeply
Sri
concerned.
Krishnavani.
Sri
He
Krishnamani.
titled them as Sri Krishnavani. I've got a copy of one of the booklets, and I also got a small. I mean, I got a very moth-eaten and copy of the one chapter of the novel called Leela. Afterwards, some people came to know about this Leela novel, and they copied much of it, at least the theme and the wording, and it was typical Kashmiri. It was Kashmiri which the common people spoke without any mixture of other. It wasn't laden
Adulteration,
with
corruption.
adulterated, whatever you call it, with the Perso-Arabic words as it is now. And I think these days Kashmiri has become virtually a dialect of Central
Persian,
Asian languages of Arabic and Persian. Kashmiri
Arabic, Persian.
has been is the most mutilated language in the world.
I also feel
You,
so. I also
I
feel
mean,
so.
you cannot recognize and
Difference.
all the content words, all the concept words are in Persian and
That's very
adapted as such, while as they should have done. And Ishwar Kaul, who I said had also adapted my father's script. See, he produced a dictionary, Kashmiri Shabdamrit, It was the
Shabdam.
first grammar in Kashmiri language written on the lines of Panini's Ashtadhyayi. So
Panani.
he gave the
Grammar.
verbal roots, he gave the nominal roots, and what
Uh,
one had to do to have this technical terminology in Kashmiri was to use Kashmiri verbs and roots and suffixes. Add suffixes to Kashmiri roots, and you can produce new words. This was my father's thinking. This
a
was his
genius.
line.
He was a
So in
genius.
his later life, after he retired, and after many tragedies, I told you, we lost our elder brother at the age of 24. And afterwards, when he retired, he was offered the post of chief editor Kashmiri Dictionary. The
Okay.
chief, this project was undertaken by J&K Cultural Academy. And when the first volume was out, the very first, he was criticized that he was producing a dictionary in Golwalkar's Kashmiri.
My God. My
हेलो हेलो हेलो
हाँ कट गया ये यहाँ पे पता नहीं
हाँ
क्या
हाँ कट गया यहाँ भी कट गया मैं एक मिनट लगेगा तो लगा देख सकते हैं क्या हो रहा है
Sorry, I think there is some interruption on their side, some technical snag. I don't know. Unfortunately, it was very wonderful conversation going on. We'll wait for some time. Let's hope that it turns out to be fine. Hello.
Yes, and this is Gans, and I'm just restarting the laptop. It went into a random forced update.
So what to do now?
No, it's at 90%. We can't control it. Dadu, मैंने on किया. Don't worry. He's gonna be back in under a minute. Don't worry. Dadu on है.
It will be under the, but is it disconnected now or it will continue?
It will continue again. Once it restarts,
It's a live session going all around the world.
Yeah, I know. It's not. I
How much?
can't control his laptop.
But you didn't have the support system with it.
No, I was sitting next to him. It went into a random update, and I don't really use his laptop, obviously, so I didn't know it would do that.
Should have been checked.
Everything
Anyway,
else was set up.
that needed to be checked. Anyway, I mean, we'll wait. We'll wait. People are waiting. People will ultimately, because it was a very nice discussion going on.
I know. I was sitting right in front of him, like in front of his bed.
Kindly, if you do it immediately and possible.
Yes.
I have sent you another link as well. If some problem comes with the first link, then another link as well.
No, there won't be an issue with the link. It's just the tech and the slide, and I really don't. I mean, it was something out of my control, so that's why this happened.
Okay. We'll just have to wait. There is a technical snag at their end. I don't know what to do for the time being. I could invite some other guest, but right now I'm helpless because it was such a precious and such a valuable this session. We could, meet with many things, many wonderful understandings of how his father, how great his father was, what his genius was, what his contribution was. I mean, he says that the first movie was produced by him, and it was on the about the women liberation, and our society was so much dogmatic, so much conservative at that point of time that the entire people among the community went against it, and the hierarchy went against him, and finally, it was finally it was that was destroyed, and finally he was not given, he was demoted rather in his service, and but such a great man with such linguistic understanding, he was a genius. His father, how he connected with that, the understand Sheena, commonalities between Sheena and Kashmir, and he wanted to make Devanagari easier, and he wrote into the Kashmiri. He wrote into the Kashmiri, or all his first novel was in the Kashmiri. So he was a pioneer, kind of one of the great genius personalities of those times. I mean, I don't know what happened later on. And Toshkhani Saab is very true also in his saying that nowadays Kashmiri is ludicrous. I mean, a person like me, although I'm not of that generation, even I can just think of, that how this Kashmiri is being spoken. It is almost replacement of Arabic. It's almost replacement of Iranian, Persian. And where is the Kashmiri left? So only the small suffixes here and there, those are of the Kashmiri, and the rest all this. I think I had many things to ask to Dr. Toshkhani, but I don't know. Unfortunately, this have happened. He's an old man, and probably he is on a backup system by someone, his grandson, and probably he must not be having tech savvy, and now they're waiting. The computer went off. They should have tried and checked it. Earlier. I was always telling them professionally many days before that at least check your system, check your apparatus, because it's a world broadcast and people all over the globe very eagerly wait for this program, Sheetalnath Conversations. I don't know. So we are also going to talk about Lalleshwari today, and I think Toshkhani Saab had a great things to tell about Lalleshwari. There are certain misunderstanding and many interpolations happened after this George Grayson's. He when he tried to translate it for the first time from the verbal, and he transcribed it, and then he translated it, and then many people like Jalal Cole and many Europeans, even Indians, have been recently. Nirja Matu also translated. I have also translated all these her couplets, but I'm not confident about the Kashmiri words, because there are certain words which are very ambiguous. So that kind of a thing happened. So let us see if he's resumed. So Laleshwari is a great topic to be talked about. He always wanted to talk about Laleshwari. I told him to talk about your life as well. How was your beginning? How was your student time? What was the anecdote of Kashmir in those days? How was Kashmir going on? But he was emphasizing that, okay, you may talk about myself, my father, and other things, but I will mainly talk about this Laleshwari and interpolation which has happened. We have so many translators and everybody is adding on. And Laleshwari wrote in the, I mean, rustic, in the pure Kashmiri. And certainly over the years certain words are beyond our approach and beyond our reach. But I think with the time, I'll just check it whether he's back or not. It was going very well. I don't know. Hello? Yes? Hello? Hello?
इसमें थोड़ी सी प्रॉब्लम हो गई, इसमें अपडेट्स आ गए।
अच्छा, अभी क्या?
अभी दूसरा लैपटॉप ही ला रहा है, इसमें अपडेट्स आ गए अचानक।
दूसरा लैपटॉप में तो यू विल हैव टू रीस्टार्ट दैट। चलो।
नमस्कार जी, मैं चित्रा बोल रही हूँ।
नमस्कार।
हम दूसरा लैपटॉप स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं। 5-10 मिनट में मेरा बेटा दूसरा लैपटॉप स्टार्ट कर रहा है, उससे कर लेंगे।
नहीं, बट अभी फिर ये वाला तो डिस्कनेक्ट हो गया ना, बिकॉज नाउ पीपल आर इन ट्यून्ड इट, देन वी विल हैव टू रीस्टार्ट अगेन।
इसमें दूसरे वाले लैपटॉप में रिट्यून नहीं हो सकते हैं क्या?
नहीं, हाउ इज इट पॉसिबल, बिकॉज ये कनेक्ट ऑलरेडी हो चुका है, दिस इज कंटिन्यूइंग हियर एंड
ठीक है, आप 5 मिनट दे दीजिए, तब तक आप कंटिन्यू रखिए, 5 मिनट दे दीजिए।
ओके। So they are asking me to continue for 5 minutes, and I don't know how they'll work. And I mean, they think that they are going to use another laptop. And what should we do in the meantime? So I was talking about Lalleshwari, and we had I mean, Nirja Matu. She has translated Lalwak into English, and probably Jalal Kaul is someone who knows it, who has done it very well. Avtar Motaji and other people had told me that I mean, his translations are very good. I have not studied Jalal Kaul's translations, but I feel translator has to be very intelligent and very capable man. Unless and until translator knows his job well, he knows the source language and the destination language, and he is sharp, intelligent, and he has a grip on the language. I don't think translation is an easy affair. This is because of this that everybody is now translating without understanding the word, without understanding the context, without understanding. Madam Indu Kilamji was telling me other day that when I translated Nafi Shafai's translations, probably it was a kind of she went to her place, and she made her to make her understand every single word, its meaning, its intonations, its all dimensions and shades. Then only could she be possible. She translated. I think that is how the great translators do it. They work very hard, and it needs. It doesn't need. And most of the translators, they add on their own versions. It becomes something else. The original thing is something else, and that's why I say the translation is a very different and a very difficult job. Yes, sir. You're
ये
back
ऐसा
now.
होगा, इसमें अचानक अपडेट्स का आ गया।
अभी चल रहा है ना?
Suddenly,
ठीक है,
आप
अभी
खत्म
चल
हो
रहा
गया,
है।
आप दूसरा नहीं, we have discarded that, we have gotten another this PC, एक
ओके
और
ओके,
PC को आया।
अभी चल रहा है। आप कंटिन्यू कर लिए,
हाँ,
अब कर लीजिए।
अब ठीक है, ये चलेगा, ये PC चलेगा।
आई डोंट नो, अब पता नहीं कनेक्ट कैसे हुआ ये, बट हो गया।
वेरी अपडेट्स आ गए, सडनली अपडेट्स होते हैं ना, उसमें टाइम
हाँ
लगता है इसमें।
चलिए
Abdus
अपने
Alam.
लेट्स मूव अहेड बीच में मैंने काफी ज्यादा बोला हूँ बीच में मैं
I'm
तो
sorry. I'm sorry.
डजंट मैटर अभी हम लोग क्या करेंगे टेल अस समथिंग अबाउट योर चाइल्डहुड आल्सो अपना टेल अस
Well,
अबाउट
I was born in Kashmir in Srinagar, but I was born in a house which was a rented one and not our ancestral house. Our ancestral house was in Zanakadal, just near the mosque of Shah Hamdan, or I should say the Kali temple. Because
ओके
the first thing, as soon as I gained consciousness, one of the first things I heard was that today it is the birthday of Kali, and it was snowing heavily, and I didn't know who Kali was and what Kali was. But my people and the entire family and the entire undivided family went to that place on the bank of the river Vitasta, where the slab see on which the image of Kali is inscribed. So we all went, and that was my first introduction with religion or with whatever you call it. So for the first time I saw was a Kali image on the banks of river Vitasta. But later on, thanks to my father, I and he was using Hindi was the language of my mental makeup from the beginning, and he would get for me a uh, children's magazine in Hindi called Shishu. And this Shishu would all it was published from Allahabad, and this Shishu would also send the yearly subscription was just 2 rupees
ओके
at that time. But this Shishu would also send small booklets on cultural
प्लीज कंटिन्यू
heroes, on historical heroes, on
यस
religious people. So
ओके
my first education began like that. So I
वेरी गुड
read those small booklets which were sent by these publishers of this Shishu and about see Prahalad and about Dhruv and about Rana Pratap and about Shivaji and about all other historical personalities. And I also read a book on this Mewar Gaurav Gatha, which translated Colonel Todd's story on Rajasthan into Hindi. Because, but I learned English from the beginning. My father was very particular about it that I should learn English. He got all the books from for me on even including mathematics and all that in English. And those books were at that time not read in any school of Jammu and Kashmir. Those books
ओके
he imported from Burma. So I read books in English on every subject published in Burma. So that was how my education. It was an informal education. I didn't go to any school directly at that time. Later on, I was sent to this church missionary school at Fateh Kadal, but I wasn't a regular student because I was very young in age.
ओके
So afterwards, I was young in age. Then after my father, my elder brother passed away, we left that house at Zaina Kadar. But much of my father's see, books, small books on say religion, even Lalleshwari, she had a book edited by one Mr. Charagi, Sarvanand Charagi, and it was also in which he was helped by Professor Push. That also a mouth-written book. You see, that also I got from there, and some other religious books also. But at that very time, and I was interested in things, but I was more interested in Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose
रेवोल्यूशनरी
and the Indian this freedom movement. And again, in this, my father also features because he used to receive songs written on the freedom movement,
ओके
popular songs, and one of his relatives would, she was a lady, she would send it from Lahore. So I would read those songs, and I would get inspired, and I would get inspired by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's life also, whatever he said on the, there was a radio, we had a radio, and he would speak on the radio also, Azad Hind radio. So I got inspired by that. I got inspired by these books. And the first very lines that I wrote, one, I mean, no, I didn't write, I mean, I just spoke in Hindi. Must have been hardly 7 or 8 at that time. I wrote was इंसान वो नहीं है वो आतश फिशान है. This is about Subhash Chandra Bose. So he is not a human being, but he is a volcano. And this was the first line I have ever composed in poetry at about 7 or 8. And other 2 lines also, हिंदुस्तान में रहने वालों, दुख मुसीबत सहने वालों, उठो हथियार संभालो. Whereas I had 7 or 8, I couldn't compose a better line at that time. But my interest in poetry grew afterwards, particularly because my brother, elder brother, was a fan of Harivansh Rai Bachchan.
Oh.
The father of the present superhero or whatever
Amitabh
you
Bachchan.
call him, Amitabh
Amitabh
Bachchan.
Bachchan.
So he would get his books. He would get all his books, and I have whatever books were published at that time, Nishani Mantran and Madhushala and all that. I would read those books. I was very much interested. Then I read certain books of certain other poets also.
Okay.
Narendra Sharma. I read a book of Narendra Sharma. Narendra Sharma was a communist those days. He wrote a book called Lal Nishan.
Lal Nishan.
So
Okay.
I read Nishan also. So most day poems, those poems that my father's relatives sent from Lahore. शुरू हुई जन जंग रण राजों का भंग हुई डंके पे मार युद्ध की है पुकार आज कौमी जिहाद होंगे हिंदी आजाद होंगे हिंदी आजाद ऐसी किसकी मजाल छेड़े झंडे को लाल ऐसी किसकी मजाल 3 रंगी पताका उठी दे के धमाका. So such songs, and also the songs of Bachchan. I liked Bachchan very much. Those days he was the first among my favorite poets in Hindi, and also Narendra Sharma and his Lal Nishan and other things. Then I read other books of Narendra Sharma also, and slowly my interest, you see, grew in poetry, and it was always already there. I also wrote some poems, and I also read some of the works of poets like Sohan Lal Dwivedi. Sohan Lal Dwivedi was a Gandhi fan. He was a Gandhiist, and he wrote some very beautiful poems on freedom movement also. So on Gandhi also he wrote, and then other things also. So I read Sohan Lal Dwivedi. So it continued. Thus and my interest in poetry grew, and in a very early age I started writing. Of course, that was not, I was not more than a kind of a rhymester, and there was not much depth in those poems, but I was always interested in poetic expression. So that is how I might. Then I didn't have, as I said, any regular schooling. My father taught me books in English on various subjects.
You were home
Till
taught.
I was finally sent to first missionary school, but I was only a casual student there. Then I told you that my brother passed away. We left the house. We went to a hired house, rented house in Sathu, Varparsha again. I was born in Sathu, Varparsha, in the house of Wazir, in Wazir Kocha.
Wazir Kocha.
I was born there. So just near that, we rented a house, and from there, my father took me what was known as there at that time Haddo's School. Haddo's School was also run by these very church mission missionary people. And later on, it was named as Biscoe School after Biscoe.
Biscuit school.
Tyndale Biscoe passed away.
Tyndall.
So I got some values from Haddo School also, but Haddo School also did not last. I was just 11 or 12 when my father told me that he should be admitted to the 11th class, I mean, sorry, 9th class. So it was very strange. They took me a test in various subjects, particularly English. Somehow I got through the test. I don't know how. It was miraculous. But then after that, my father got me admitted in Burn Hall. Burn
Burn.
Hall was again a Christian school, but that was before independence. Just when independence came, that school was shifted to Abbottabad, and I was again without a school.
Okay.
So, this is so far as school is concerned. Afterwards, I did my matriculation and all that. Somehow I went to SP College, and from SP College also my literary activities. I had very good professors, Professor Kashinath Dhar, Professor Baljannath Dhar. They were my those days people were not taught Hindi as an elective subject, but Hindi was an optional subject, additional optional subject. So I read, I became the student of Professor Kashinath Dhar, who became a very great scholar afterwards of Kashmir history and Kashmir culture. So these people also influenced me a bit, but on my own also I was interested in history and in culture and in religious history. All these things passed on to me also from my professor, but from my father. But he was sort of an, I can say, if not an atheist, but he was a follower of Krishnamurti, and that thing also passed on to me. I'm to
Okay.
this day I'm not a very deep believer. I'm not very
You are a
you
seeker.
don't
You are a seeker. Seeker.
you can call seeker is a different thing. No, but later on, and I did read some books of I. First, I was very much influenced by the existentialist philosophy of Albert Camus and others,
Okay.
of Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre, and
Jabal Sahib.
all those
Existentialist.
people, and Kafka. Kafka was a very favorite author of mine, very favorite author. And later on, I read almost, books on almost all poetry written in all modern poetry written in almost all languages. Of course, they were translated. So I came to know about Neruda and Rilke and Lorca and all those people and modern poets also. And so my soon after writing some songs, those songs were very sentimental, of course. Not so sentimental, but they were sentimental also. So afterwards, I switched over to modern poetry, or rather modernist poetry. And I remember I came to be known as a poet in my in a very early age, in my early teens. And the first prize that I got was there was a function at again your Shitalnath.
Shitalnath. Okay.
There was a function, and people were asked to recite their poems also. So I recited a poem on Shri Bhatt, I remember.
Okay.
तुम सिम्ह हजार श्रृगालों में तुम एक हंस सौ कागों में जयमाल तुम्हारी क्यों न गूंथ लूं मैं गीतों के धागों में. I wrote on Shri Bhatt. So, and I got a prize for it. The prize was a hefty sum of 10 rupees.
Okay.
So that was my first prize. But later on, I switched over to modernist poetry, poetry of disillusion, and poetry of this anti-establishment poetry, poetry of about this disintegration of values, and more than that, I was influenced by existentialism. So I wrote about meaning of life and all that. So this
Okay.
thing continued till I became quite an adult, and I was in my 20s. This thing continued. I wrote, and later also I continued to write much after also on basically on anti-establishment poems, and poems which showed tension between me and the atmosphere in which uh, people lived. The disillusionment because the dreams that people saw were shown after independence, you see, were shattered. They
Okay.
didn't come, they were not, you see, fructified. So I also was one of the guys who shouted against establishment in my poems, but I think that some of them were my best poems, you see, the anti-establishment poems and all that. So I continued to write till we came to Delhi, and then the Exodus took place, and I wrote a number of poems on Exodus also. So that was my career as a poet. But I was also, you see, I established, I was my mental makeup, as I told you. Hindi was the language of my mental makeup, in spite of my education at Christian schools. I met those English boys also at Burnhall, and I told them very clearly, I don't think much of you. We are going
Okay.
to get our freedom. We are going to get our freedom. He said, no, your Subhash Chandra Bose is in a league with Japan, and Japanese are very cruel people. I said, no, we are going to get independence. And soon after, Burn Hall was closed here and was taken to Abbottabad for some time. And later on, after many years, it was reopened. And there also, there were Christian missionaries, and they did try to win you over to their faith.
Sir, I would like to say that you wrote the very wonderful books. Your contribution to the culture, history, literature, art, social sciences is very modern, objective, and monumental. You wrote many books like A Critical History of Kashmiri Literature, Rites and Rituals of Kashmiri Brahmins, Cultural Heritage of Kashmiri Pandits, and then you wrote hundreds of papers in the distinguished and very very different places across India and the globe, and which were concerning aesthetics, concerning history, concerning culture, concerning all the dimensions of culture and languages and linguistic in that matter. So kindly tell us about this your the books you authored. What were the content? What were their essence? And how did they go with the public?
you see, my field of interest was
Right.
varied. Culture was the basis,
Okay.
language, culture, history, philosophy,
Yes.
and also see poetics, or you call it aesthetics. So these were the subjects in which I was quite interested, and I wrote something. After much research and hard work, I wrote on these things. I wrote about Kashmiri language first of all. I know, of course, following my father's footsteps, as I told you that he had gone to Gilgit in early 30s when I was not even born. He had gone to Gilgit, and he studied the relationship between Shina and Kashmiri. So I also got interested in the this subject. You see, the origin and this classification of Kashmiri language. It's let's see. Uh, the language group Amanwal from Kashmiri has been derived, how it has evolved, how it has taken the present shape. So I started writing papers on that, and also those papers were most of the papers were published also. But I'm yet to write a full-fledged book, though I have several papers on the evolution and development of Kashmiri language. And in that, I studied quite a number of linguists of the country, especially Siddheshwar Verma. And my father, of course, was there, but he had not written much on this. But I wrote on read several authors whose views were not always complimentary, always favorable. But I came to know that Kashmiri has developed as other Indian languages have from the this old Indo-Aryan, from old Indo-Aryan, from which other languages have also been, Indian languages have also evolved. So Kashmiri has evolved in the same way from Prakrit Abram stages, or rather Middle Indo-Aryan stages, to the modern stage. And that's how I took for my PhD. I went to college also, as I told you, and we had a debating society in Hindi also, and that debating society was later on closed because some people didn't like it. But I established another organization known as Hindi Sahitya Sammelan, and we had great people like this Rahul Sankirtan and Dr. Raghuveer. So they also, encouraged me, and my interest in linguistics and culture and such studies grew. So I started with language also. I wrote on culture also, so, because this thing interested me. Now, these books, I start also, apart from my literary apart from this. So one thing about I forgot to tell you that when I was just writing in Hindi, I started also. I'm sorry, I may tell you something like that before time. Also, I organized a function. I mean, with the help of my organization, this Kashmir Hindi Sahitya Sammelan, of which I was the founder, general secretary. So had a function organized to remember Lalleshwari, and I was still in my teens. And that was the time when I translated Lalleshwari first. I was just below 20, and I translated some 12 verses of Lalleshwari. And I was surprised when some of the verses were, I saw some of the verses in uh, question paper, Hindi question paper, as unseen passage. I don't know how it reached them, but I don't know how it reached them. But some of my translations of Lalleshwari at that stage, I have translated Lalleshwari several times. So some of these four or so these translations of Lalleshwari's works were published in Saptahik Hindustan. And my first poem, Saptahik Hindustan, I don't know who published. I didn't send them anything. And then my first poem was published it was a top Hindi magazine those days, Kalpana.
Kalpana.
It was published from Hyderabad. So, and of course, they were all modernist poems, and because the editor was also a modernist, so I wrote in the modern style. But before that, when the Cultural Academy was inaugurated at Bakshi Ghulam Muhammad's house, he held a Kavi Sammelana Mushaira, and in that Mushaira, poets from different languages were invited. I was not invited as a poet, but I also participated. So, from there were Dogri poets, there was Ramnath Shastri, and there was,
Ramnath
of
Shastri.
course, Nadim Shah was, of course, there. Nadim Shah was there from
Nadim.
Kashmiri. So then he later became Mir Nasrullah. He later became this son-in-law of Bakshi Ghulam Muhammad. He saw me. I was a student in at SB College. So he saw me. He said, "Why don't you write poems? Why don't you recite one?" So I recited a poem It was in 1956, I remember, when the Cultural Academy was inaugurated at Bakshi Guru Muhammad's house. So I wrote a poem, आवाज जिसे सुन उपवन की कलियां चौंकी, मलयज का नृत्य नहीं आंधी की आहट है. It was
Wow.
cheered, liked very much. You see, I got a rousing,
Revolutionary.
ovation for that poem. आवाज जिसे सन उपवन की कलियां चौंकी, मलयज का नृत्य नहीं आंधी की आहट है. And आंधी came later on, of course, as we know very well. So, but I wrote that poem there, and I continue to
Tell
write
me,
in both blank
tell me,
verse and
Toshkhani
rhymes
sahab,
also. So these books, but just a minute, I'll come to your point. But poetry
we are running
alone was
time.
not
Time is
my.
short. Time is short.
Therefore,
We have to cover many subjects here.
are we getting late? Are we
No,
getting
not
late?
late. I mean, I'm saying that I'm not getting late, but question is that we have to do many questions are have yet to come. You can continue for some time. Then
So
we'll continue.
that's it. So I got interested in these things. I first wrote in Kashmiri language. Then, as far as the rituals are concerned, I was given a small fellowship for 2 years by IGNCA. There was a
Okay.
scholar, Professor Saraswati. He's a great. I don't know. He's not living now. He was a very great scholar, a modern scholar, and he wanted. Why don't you write something on Kashmiri rituals? I said, I don't know Kashmiri rituals. I'm not a very strict believer in religion. Or so no, he said, no, not as a religion, but as a historian of religion. You can write something on rituals. So I studied Kashmiri Pandit rituals very seriously, and unfortunately, I found no book was written on the subject. Nothing was available except the great Keshav Bhatt Jyotishi, who reproduced printed books on Kashmiri rituals, Karmakand, as it is called,
Dharmakant.
uh, from his own pocket. He was a teacher, and he would go from Ranawari, he would go to Nunar, but he would bring out these small tracts, small books, and a big one also on Kashmiri Karmakand. And even those were not available at that time because he started a printing press called Krishna Press. But Krishna Press, you see, when he passed away, his inheritors were not interested in these ritual books on ritual. So they stopped. So with great difficulty, I managed to get something from different people. I went to Jammu and met the oldest ritualist alive at that time. So I did. He also showed me some manuscripts of Sharda. In Sharda, by then I had come to know about Sharda, and I got interested particularly in this thing also, Kashmiri development of Kashmiri literature. When I did my PhD, the theme for the subject of my PhD thesis was Banasur Katha.
Yes, I wanted to know about
Banasur,
Banasur Katha. I wanted to know
yeah,
about that
yeah.
that Shri
I'm coming to that.
Bhatt
Banasur,
Avtara poetry of
yeah,
15th century. Yeah.
Banasur Katha is a 15th century manuscript. It's a work of poetry. It's a poetic work written based on the theme of this Usha and Aniruddha episode of the Puranas, of Harivansh Puran. See the love between Usha and Aniruddha. How Usha managed to abduct. Usha was an Apsara. Usha was a beautiful nymph, and how she managed to abduct this man, Banasur's son, Aniruddha. And it is so beautiful, the lilting cadences of that book, of that work. And the great thing is that the very first songs in Kashmiri, very first lyrics in Kashmiri are in that work. Piya magas marane, or
Ah,
kar so piye me nikato. So I wrote about the linguistic peculiarities as well as the poetic peculiarities of Banasur Katha. But what I have to say, there was a lone copy of the manuscript which Dr. Buehler, George Buehler, had obtained from Bikaner, not from Kashmir. Though he had come to Kashmir also in search
Okay.
of Kashmiri and Sanskrit manuscripts, but he found nothing in Kashmir. So far as Kashmiri is concerned, he found this lone copy of the manuscript from Bikaner and he gave it to Deccan College, and Deccan College passed it on to this Bhandarkar Oriental Institute, and it is some people have in the Cultural Academy had got this manuscript for a while, and this Dr. Buehler had given the notice of this work as Banasur Vad.
Banasur
No
Vad.
Banasur Vad. I saw that is I saw the colophone. See, Amin Kamil saw, and others saw that. Amin Kamil, of course, couldn't read Sharda, but he called it Bana Sarud. Bana Survad
Banasur.
bhi nahi, Bana Sarud. So for him it was because in Persian script you write it like that.
Okay.
So Bana Sarud, then I was the first to discover that it is not Bana Sarud, but it is Banasur Katha. Iti lehre Shrigalapuri Banasura Katha Samapta Shubhamastu Lekhaka Pathakayo Shubhamastu. That is the column, this colophon. The colophon said that it was written in this Lar village of Lar called Shalapur
Lar.
and written by Avatar Bhatt. But the
Avatar
language
Vad.
is, that's why we are again discussing Lalleshwari. It has all links with Lalleshwari again. The language is quite different. Though it was written in the 15th century, the language is older. The language is quite old. It is just when Kashmiri was evolving, or rather had evolved from a Brahmsprachit stage and was taking the shape of a modern language. Just that. You see, I can quote an example, one or two examples. Shunet vano kumbhande banas Anot manget kita vinash yuddha mahadusa e panasal deva ayam vayan mabhash. This was the kind of language we had in Banasura Katha. And even more, see, the words which are no longer in use. For instance, we had yakhet and takhet for yeli and teli.
Yeli and Teli. Acha.
No, for youth and tooth. Yakhet and takhet. We have kshi for chi. So the language was quite different and of Manasur Katha. And the same language we found in a later manuscript also. That is Sukhduk Charit. Sukhduk Charit, this was written, composed at the time of Zainul Abidin. 1446 was the date when this work was written. And another book, Sukhduk Charit, written by one Ganak Prashast. Ganak, of course, means a calculator, so he was perhaps most probably an astrologer. So he wrote Ganak Prashast. It was a sort of a guide to good living, guide to moral living. So Ganak Prashast, I also read. The language is absolutely the same. And what's great about it is that the metrical system, the meters were all from Sanskrit. They were all syllabic meters from Sanskrit. Narakataka Vartam, Chardulu Vikritatam. So they were all Sanskrit meters were used by the author of Banasur Katha, and the meters changed according to requirement. But there were also some. I was astonished to see these syllabic meters of Sanskrit in Banasur Katha, Vaitali Vrittam. So all these are, but there were also some meters which were not Sanskrit meters. They were from Thaddo and Furo. There were 2 meters which it appeared to me that they were original Kashmiri meters. You see. But before that also, I got interested. I till then I had also to read because I wrote on the linguistic peculiarities of Banasur Katha. So I had also to read this this Shitikans, this Mahanai Prakash. And before Shitikans Mahanai Prakash, we had another manuscript called Chumma Sampradaya, Chumma Sanket Prakash. Chumma Sanket Prakash was probably composed during the 11th century. And it was written by perhaps by one Shivanand or his disciple. And the language was totally different. It was written in 3 languages. First, there was a Prakrit, aphorism, Prakrit Sutra, and after Prakrit Sutra, there was a commentary in Sanskrit. Then there were 30 odd verses very in the earliest form of Kashmiri, I can say, 11th century Kashmiri. See, Kashmiri by then had started, taking the shape of a distinct language, but it was not what a modern language in any case. It was a very old, very language of which very little can be understood. So that was the first work in Kashmiri that I studied. Then this Shitikans, Mahane Prakash, which is again, both these books are based on the doctrines of this Krama school of Kashmir Shaivism. I must tell you that it was the Krama school of Shaivism, and in fact Shaivism itself, that encouraged people to write in the local vernacular. So these were the 2 books written in local vernacular. In Bana, in this Shitikant called his language Desh. So it was a Desha Bhasha, as it is called. Banasur Katha also, Banasur Katha also called its language Desha Bhasha. Desho Avatara Bhatta Virachon Ramani Akhya. So it was Desha Bhasha. And then I read Dr. Tagare's work. Desha Bhasha was the name given to all local and regional languages throughout India. So this was a Desha Bhasha. And she called it Sarva Gochar Desha Bhasha. Sarva Gochar means regional language intelligible to all. But if you read it, you cannot understand a word of it today. But there are, of course, features with nascent features, which later on took the shape of modern Kashmiri. So Banasur Katha was a very beautiful poetic work, and it had the first 5 or so Kashmiri lyrics of the Vachan type, you see, having a refrain and having 3 very beautiful lines. I told you, Kar iso pime nikto. And this is
Vachan,
not a
Vachan,
language. The
Vachan is 4
Vachan
stanza.
sounds, it was very, but it
Vachan is
is
4 stanza.
Vachan is actually both.
4 stanza.
Lalleshwari has referred to both Vachan and Vak.
Vak.
So Vachan
Vak
was
and
also the kind of language, kind of meter, or kind of poetic form used by Kannada poets, Veershaiva
Kannada.
poets,
Yes. Vachan.
by this Mahadevi Akka, by
Mahadevi
Baswaraja.
Akka. Andal
They,
also. Andal.
they wrote in this very easy.
Mahadevi Akka was the similar like
Vachan form. They are known as Vachankars. They are all Vachankars.
Vachan.
They wrote Vachan. In
People
Kashmiri,
have got
Lalleshwari
research in this.
wrote about Sui mein laligom vakta vachan.
Vak
So
to
in
Vachan.
Kashmiri,
Vaki or Vachan.
so it seems that both the forms were prevalent in Kashmiri, and later on the works must have got lost. And but this was Banasur Katha, as I told you. This was I did a detailed study of every linguistic category of Banasur Katha. And I showed how modern Kashmiri has been derived, has evolved, has developed from this language. But it was not that old as the language of this Chumma Sampradaya. So both of them are works of Krama school. Krama school of this. Unfortunately, about Shama Sampradaya, I tell you, it was a very written in the Sharda script, and the only copy was about to be typed, about to be printed and published by the Research and Publication Department in 1960s. But all of a sudden, it was withdrawn. I don't know why it was withdrawn. I got 16 pages of daily proof. Later on, there was a very great scholar, a very good scholar of Kashmir, this Sanskrit scholar, who was a head pandit, working as head pandit in this research. Then it was known as Research and Publications Department. He was Dinanath Yaksh. Dinanath Yaksh helped me with the Sharda script. At that time, I did not know the Sharda script because this all early books, including this Banasur Katha and Chuma Sampradaya and Sukhduk Charit and all even the Rup Bhavani's works, they were written in Sharda script. So I had this gentleman, this great scholar, you see, he helped me very much. But unfortunately, the publication of the book, of the work, was suddenly withdrawn. The reason not being given. Unfortunately, when he came to Delhi in the 1990s, he forgot. He had given a copy of this book, handwritten copy, translated into Devanagari to me and to Dr. Rastogi, Dr. Navjeevan Rastogi, the great Kashmir Shaivism scholar. Unfortunately, there was some water that spilled on this manuscript, and a number of the verses, a number of pages were washed out. And now we don't have. But later on, Dr. Rastogi published whatever was left of the manuscript, whatever was left of the work. He published it in another work of his, Abhinav Gupta Ka Tantra Margiya Darshan. He published it as an appendix, and he asked me to help him so far as the Kashmiri portion was concerned. There were only 30 verses of additional explanation in Kashmiri. There were 74 verses in all. And at the top was a Prakrit aphorism, a Prakrit Sutra. It was trilingual. This Mahane Prakash is also in two languages. Mahane Prakash was written by the Kashmiri of that time by Shitikant. But the commentary, he has written the commentary also in Sanskrit. So it's again a bilingual book, Kashmiri as well as Sanskrit. The first purely Kashmiri manuscript, Kashmiri poetic work is Banasur Katha. That's the first, and Muhibul Hasan also calls it the first secular, I don't know what he meant by that, the first secular poetic work in Kashmiri, of Kashmiri literature. So he did not read the work, of course, but he called it a secular work. But it's a very beautiful work. The descriptions are beautiful. Basically, the descriptions of love and war. They are the basic descriptions, and of course the theme.
Daksa will come to. I want to come to now the Lalleshwari, the 14th century mystic poetess Lalleshwari, whose esoteric understanding of this spirituality of Shiva Shivdarshi, Shiv Yogini as well. And I really want to ask one thing. First of all, it was George Grierson who translated the first version of Lalleshwari's Lalwa. He actually started it from somebody, Dharamdasa of Gash, who verbally told him. Yeah, and
of
compiled
Bush
it and
village. He was
compiled
living in
later
Bush
on.
village near
Yeah,
Sharda Peeth.
near Sharda Peeth. Yeah. So let me complete
So
the
yes,
question
he got
first.
it, but he got it. He did not get it directly. He asked Pandit Mukundaram Shastri to go to him, and this man
Okay.
was a traditional reciter. You see, he remembered it. It was the tradition of his family to
He was a
recite
storyteller,
Lalleshwari.
narrator.
No, not only a storyteller, but also he also recited Lalleshwari's works. He would, so
And my
whatever
question
he
was
remembered.
incomplete. Yeah. My question was incomplete. What I
So,
said that
so
later on, Richard Temple, Jalal Cole, Coleman Bach, Ranjit Hoskote, they all translated. But don't you think there's a lot much interpolation which happened with the original text and its authenticity? For its authenticity and putting it into the context, we required some kind of an exercise, some kind of a final word and work.
well, you see, you are talking about Laleshwari's works and its
Yeah, yeah,
authenticity and all that. You
yeah, yeah.
see, the works were transmitted through oral tradition. They did not, Laleshwari did not leave any
Right.
written work
Right.
behind. See, they were composed there and then. She was a wandering ascetic. She had become a wandering ascetic
She was a wanderer.
after,
She left her family.
being initiated by this
Her guru was a Shevist. I mean, he was the
her
he was in
guru.
the parampara,
This
Vasudeva
so
parampara.
he was initiated by this man. He was in the lineage of which one?
Vasu
No, no,
Gupta.
no, no,
Yes, yes.
no, no.
Vasu Gupta
He was in Vasugupta's lineage. No, he
lineage.
was in
Yeah.
Vasugupta's lineage. He was not this thing. He was this. Uh, she was also some cunt. He was.
I have forgotten his
I
name
don't
now,
remember.
but
I'll just not remember. I'll just not remember. Or I'll see it just now in my this thing and I'll just find out. Uh,
okay. Anyway, let's move ahead. So
so
interpolation is
it
happening.
was. So yeah, you see these things were. I told you the language. I told you about the language of Banasur Katha. I told you about the
Yes, sir.
language of Summa Sampradaya and other or earlier Kashmiri works.
Yeah,
So
you
when
already told.
these works came to us, they were, see, every generation through which these works passed, to which who received these works, changed the language, changed the language according to the language that was contemporary at that time. So the language went on changing. And naturally, it was not. This was not the language in which it was originally written, and also there was some mixture. See, some of the works that Laleshwari did not at all write were attributed
Okay.
to her, and some of the works written by Lalleshwari were attributed to Sheikh Nuruddin. There are 35 such works identified by Professor J.L. Kaul, who wrote a
Yes.
very beautiful book on Lalleshwari, Lal Jad, published by the Sahitya Academy in 1973. And he was the first person to demolish the myth that Lalleshwari had a meeting with Ali Shah Hamdani, because Ali Shah Hamdani came in the 1384, and at that time Lalleshwari had already passed away. So there was no possibility of the two meetings. So it was a meeting that never was. And this Professor G.L. Cole was the first to point this out, and he pointed it out after reading Persian chronicles, several Persian chronicles on Kashmir, in which they said, yep, this is not proved. Dawood Mishkati, this manuscript said that this thing never happened. And later on, we have this among modern scholars, there is Abdul Qadir Qureshi. You see, Abdul Qadir. So he Abdul Qadir, just now, I'll just, is it Qureshi or I'll just find out. Hey, just 1 minute. I'll find out the name of this
Doesn't
author.
matter, doesn't matter.
No,
Take your
no, it
time.
matters to me.
Sound is not coming. Sound. Sound is not coming. Sound. No, sound is not coming. Sound is disturbed. Sound.
Is it okay now?
Now it's fine.
Is
Yeah.
it?
Now it's calm.
I
Yeah.
don't know how it got. So, this gentleman, this Abdul Qayyum Rafiki, wrote a book on Sufism in Kashmir, in which he also dealt with the relation of Lalleshwari and Sheikh Nuruddin. And he also wrote about Ali Shah Hamdani. And he said that the meeting never, he confirmed it and said that this meeting never took place. So there was no question of Laleshwari being influenced by him. So,
Or by Sufism
as
for
far
that
as
matter.
Sheikh Nuruddin is concerned, again,
Sundaresh.
these are only myths that she offered her milk breasts to Sheikh Nuruddin when he was an infant. This she was in an old age at that time, and he was born in 1378 or something like that. So how could Lalleshwari,
Yeah.
who passed away soon after, in perhaps 82 or something like that, 84, how could Lalleshwari have, and why should she have done this? I mean, this is only to show the influence that Lalleshwari wielded on Sheikh Nuruddin, and Sheikh Nuruddin himself accepted that influence about on of Lalleshwari on him.
Lalleshwariya
Uh,
Pompor.
so
Pompor. She.
so Padman Porish Lale Temi Gale
Padmanpur is
Amrut
Lalleshwari.
Pew. You see the language. He is using Pew. Sheikh Nuruddin is using
He uses the
Sanskrit
ship.
words. And these people, he has used more Sanskrit words than most of the Pandit poets also. But words, very old words, for instance, this in Banasur Katha, P or P, the lover. And Sheikh Nuruddin has used the word Pia, P. He has used Dwij. I was surprised when came to know that he has written Dwij for a bird. Dwij means twice born. Dwij is used for a Brahmin and Dwij is used for a bird also, but only Sanskrit is snoid. So
Deva.
he
He
wrote
uses Deva.
the word,
Deva.
that is his
Deva.
own
Deva.
study,
He.
but of course, he must have been influenced by her sayings. Her sayings must have had an effect of an impact on his thinking, on his thought, and on his verses. And because there are many verses which are common, several verses which are common, 35, as I said. And these verses have to be, after all, there has to be somebody who will bring out an authentic version. And this man, you talked about Hoskote. Hoskote
Uskote.
criticized me in his book. He has criticized me in his book. He said that I belong to the school which says that Laleshwari was just a Shava Yogini, though he himself comes to that very conclusion. And he says that there is no need of a authentic version, authentic edition, standard edition, a critical edition. There's no need because he says there it's not only it is the few verses that we have got. It is that corpus, several books contributed by different people. Several verses have been written by different verses and attributed to Laleshwari. These are also Laleshwari's verses. So he calls, see, just as There's one scholar who has said that there is not one Kabir, there are several Kabirs. Because
Several Kabis.
but Kabir has written, was a prolific writer. He has written thousands of verses. Lalleshwari has just a 1 or 200 verses to her credit, and that's what we have got. We don't know. We don't still know. But everybody
And sir,
comes out with a new version
and sir,
of
I want to
Lalwaks.
contest. I
And
want to contest
the
your
language
point.
is
Your point.
sometimes
I want to contest your point that
this
is
kind,
there any
sometimes with
reflection?
that comes with
Uh,
language here,
Kashkari
you
sir,
see, is same.
Toshkhani sir,
So
I want to
when the language doesn't, the,
I want to
I
contest
have
one
again a
point.
problem. I'm not hearing.
You are a voracious reader of Laleshwari's poetry. You have read it so many
Just,
times.
just,
And
I call this me.
sound is not coming.
Hello,
Hello, hello. Yeah,
hello,
your
hello.
sound is coming. Your sound is coming. Your sound is coming. Hello,
मैं सुन
it
नहीं
is
रहा हूँ
audible.
आपको.
Hello,
Just a minute. I'm not hearing you.
you are not
Just a
able
minute.
to
I'll
hear me.
call. शाश्वत. Just a minute.
Doesn't
इसको
matter.
म्यूट
Doesn't
कर
matter.
दीजिए.
No, you continue with your voice. I mean,
सुन नहीं रहा हूँ. Now is it okay?
your voice is
Hello.
okay. My voice is coming. My voice is coming. मेरी
Now
आवाज
your voice is coming. Yes.
what I'm
So
saying is
what we
that
are,
I was simply saying one thing. I was saying that you are a ferocious reader. You have translated Laleshwari. You had a body of work on Laleshwari. You tell me, is there any single verse of Laleshwari where she ceased to be Shiv Sadhika, where she is talking about Sufism, where she is talking about even Rishi Parampara is an Indian parampara which also Nundre started. Even she talks about Rishi Parampara. She doesn't talk about any such paramparas, any such Sufism. So even if Hoskote may say anything, any damn thing in this
technique
regard,
terms
but
and
there is no
Laleshwari's
evidence.
verses.
Yeah,
Absolutely not. And there is nothing called Sufi thought in Laleshwari's verses. She
very right.
was a Shaiva
That's what I want.
Yogini, as has been
She was a
now
Shiva yogi.
accepted by most of the people, including this Mr. Hoskote, who has Hoskote or Hoskote, whatever his name be. He has criticized me severely for saying that Laleshwari was a Shaiva Yogini and she was a Shaiva poet. So he has criticized me, but he has come to the same conclusion. See, we can
Even
see all the.
even for that matter, Mata Rupa Bhavani, she says that although I have not met Laleshwari, but I am on the lineage of Laleshwari. I am on the
Well,
path of
he
Laleshwari. Shiv. Yeah,
exactly what I'm going to say. There are people who say that only Persian chronicles have mentioned the name of Lalleshwari. Rupa Bhavani has mentioned her name twice, thrice, and she
right.
said that Lalleshwari is my guru.
Guru. Yeah,
Laleshwari
you
is
have it.
my guru. Twice she said that he has called, one place she calls her Lal. Lal Nam Lal.
Lal Nam Lal.
So at one place she calls her Lal, and another place she calls her Laleshwar, not Laleshwari. That is because
Laleshwar.
of Kashmiri language. That is because of Kashmiri language. We say Ganpat and not Ganpati.
Oh, yeah,
And this is in
yeah.
with other language also. We say Gauri Tritiya, we say Gauratre, not Gauri.
Gauratre. Gauratre. We
So
say
this
Gauratre.
happens. So she calls her Laleshwar and accepts her. Besides, I mean, apart from Madhav Judhar, who was her father and who was her preceptor,
Well read
she
person.
said that Laleshwari is my guru. So she
Guru.
is one of the first people to have taken the name of Lalleshwari. And not only that, she has adapted her poetic form, Vak also. The same style she has tried to adopt. And in several of her shloks or Vaks show clear influence of Lalleshwari. It's almost
That's true.
the same as Laleshwari's
Yeah, it
original.
is all
So
walk. She also wrote a
several
walk.
places, at
The
several
walk.
places, then the walk continued till see. So about walk, as I told you in Manas or Katha, we have several Sanskrit meters. But
Yeah.
this Shritikant wrote a four-line verse, you see, a quatrain, and they were all
What?
rhymed. Lalleshwari's works are based on stress also, but as Karine Schomer says, these may probably have been derived from Doha. There are several opinions. Some people say that the work has evolved from Vedic the
Vakya.
shlokas, Vedic
Vakya.
shlokas.
Okay.
I'm coming to it. Some say it has been evolved from Prakrit Gatha or Gaha, and this Karine Shomer says very clearly. She says she has not named Lalleshwari, but she has said them Shaiva writers, Shaiva poets from Kashmir have also adopted this meter, Doha. Doha is a two-line meter,
Two liner. It's a two line.
rather four half-lined meters. So we can also say that Lalleshwaris, but that's not the case. As I told you, in Banasur Katha, we have 2 meters which look like this Lalleshwari's walk, Thado and Furo. There are 2 meters. So this walk is basically Kashmir's own, you see, beloved meter. It was used by
Indigenous.
Lalleshwari and
Indigenous.
perfected by her for philosophical writing.
Yes.
So it
Yes.
was adopted by her, adapted by her for philosophical writing. And the reason for its getting so um, famous and well known among people. Uh, because it is easy to remember. It comes very easy on the ear, and you can remember it easily. And what Lalleshwari's work, what distinguishes Lalleshwari's works is that it has not only the colloquial language, but it has the rhythm of thought.
Yes. That is
Lalleshwari's
very
language
important. That's
works
very
have the
important.
rhythm of thought. So as the thought proceeds, the line also ends. And these works, you see, were not written because she was a wandering ascetic, and people would gather from different parts of Kashmir to have their questions answered. So works are of several kinds, and there are also several styles of work. So
Styles.
there are monologues, which because
Monologue.
Lalleshwari is the most personal of bhakti poets. She has written about herself. She has written about her own experience. She has written in the first person singular. Always writes in the first Bullalia.
Ballali.
Her signature line is she shows that she valued her personal experience. You see, her spiritual insights and her spiritual experience. She translates her spiritual insights and spiritual experience into soul stirring poetry. So the works, what distinguishes her works is that they are suitable for writing poetry, and people would assemble and people would try to understand, try to learn from her. And she also progressed. You see, first she was as everybody knows that she had a very bad marriage, and that she tormented by her. Their in-law
In-laws.
stories, they are prevalent everywhere. The mother-in-law stories, they are prevailing everywhere, and
Everywhere.
they are all such similar stories are being circulated about other female women poets of bhakti poets of
Just a
India,
minute. Just a
about
minute.
Bahina
Just a
Bai
minute.
and
Just a minute, sir.
yeah.
I wanted to ask a out of the track
Yes, sir.
question, sir. I want tell me
Yes,
one thing. I
yes,
was
sir.
trying to analyze. I was trying to analyze the post this Sultan period of Kashmir. Hello, hello.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
trying to
yeah,
analyze,
yeah.
and we have seen the women of great eminence there, women of with great power, great decoration, great respect in Kashmir only. But when I see the Sultan period, post Sultan period, after Shahmiri came in all these 400 periods, I am just
Don't
listening the
get you.
stories, even of Rupa Bhavani's, even for that matter, Lalleshwari, Arnimal, for that matter, anyone. We hear these stories of depravity. Is it connected with somewhere down the line with the this devolution, the denigration of economy and all other parameters which had a socio-cultural impact? Because earlier women in Kashmir were celebrated. Our first queen was this. She was decorated as coronated by Lord Krishna. It is in I mean, Nirmath Puran. So what I mean to say is this is just an off the track
But
question. It
the
lingers my mind.
Nilmat Puran shows a society which was very advanced,
Advanced.
which was very free, which was very, you see, which had a very developed aesthetic sense,
Yeah. Aesthetics,
where men would
celebration,
visit gardens and add era flowers, where women would
iconography,
have special play special water games. They would play
water
water
games,
games. So, and where women
utsav,
not
utsav.
belonging to the family, but other women also were given presents and gifts by people. They are enjoined upon to give gifts on certain
Yes,
festivals.
yes.
So that was the kind of society we had during Nilmat Puran. And you see, there are, about so far as the Lalleshwari is concerned, there are, I might be off the point also, but I want to say it. There are some feminists, you see, feminist writers. I thank the feminists also because it is because of them that Lalleshwari has become a global poet. She is being discussed and she is being regarded as a feminist icon throughout the world. But
That's a
again,
great.
they say that they try to impose all the wild theories of feminism on Lalleshwari because Lalleshwari was not a proto-feminist. She has
She
never
was not
written
a
about
prototype.
women as such. She was not a proto-feminist. And as you had an interview with her, Professor Nirja Mattu,
Madam
she
Nirja
said that
Matudi.
she gave a voice to Kashmiri women. That's not correct. There is not a single verse, single shwak which which is about domestic life. It's about different things. She writes about carpenters. She writes about oarsmen, boatsmen.
Common
She
man,
writes
common man.
about about other people. So it's not
Com-
that she writes particularly about domestic life, and therefore she was no doubt a revolutionary, a rebel. She was a rebel because in 14th century she walked out of a marriage and lost social security, and she had the courage to refuse to play the gender determined role of an obedient daughter in law. She refused to play it. But she went to this her guru. Again, I forget the name. क्या कंठ उसका नाम था? He was also a cunt. So she went to her. I don't know why if I
ठीक है.
forget this old age blues. You forgive me for this. So she went to her guru, and these our feminist scholars, good scholars otherwise, but somehow they say that must not have, she must have been, these religious sacred books must not have been made accessible to her because she was a woman. Now, there is a clear evidence that she must have read Vigyana Bhairav. She must have read even Tantra Log. And
Tantra.
also this another tantra, this Swachanda Tantra, because she follows her yogic practice was also of Laya Yoga and this the chanting of Om, based on chanting of Om, and which was she took from this Swachanda Tantra. And
Swatambha.
there are ample proofs at every step that, and she herself says, she declares, she emphasizes, she says emphatically, Parum Polum. She refers to reading. I have, see, I have studied the sacred books. I have studied the holy books, and what I have not studied, what I have not read, I am reading on my own. So she says all that, and at several places she refers to reading, and of her own reading, you know.
And
Param Gita,
I
Param
have
Gita, the Paranchas. Param
yes,
Gita, the Paranchas. You know, I have translated this. This was the first verse of Lalleshwari that I translated into Hindi. At that time, now I have changed. I wrote this. Um, what was Gita? पोथी पर पोथी रटते रहते कोरे के कोरे ये पंडित ये अविचारी कुछ ज्ञान न इनमें गढ़ता राम नाम का पाठ के जो पिंजड़े का तोता पढ़ता गीता पढ़ना एक दिखावा कैसी इनकी जड़ता पढ़ी गुनी गीता मैंने भी लेकिन ये मति भोरे पोथी पर पोथी रटते रहते कोरे के कोरे. So she has made references to her own reading of the sacred books and the tantras. She has referred to tantras also several times. She was a follower of tantras, you see. And Kashmir Shaivism is of course embedded, rooted in the tantric worldview.
tantric world. That's true.
And in
That's true.
several of her verses also, she has very clearly referred to tantric rites. Vathu Ranya Artun Sakar. She has referred to even left-handed practices. Then she has referred to the term Sahaj, which comes from the Siddhas. Siddhas, there were 84 Siddhas, as you know. They were on the margin of Buddhism and Shaivism, on the crossroads rather, on the intersection, at the intersection of Buddhism
Intersection
and
of
Shaivism. So they use this word Sahaj for spontaneous realization of Param Shiva, spontaneous. And as you know, that Shiv or the ultimate reality for Lalleshwari was universal consciousness.
universal consciousness.
It was not a personal God.
It's
It
not
was
a
not a personal a God with form, God with attributes. She was a Nirgun Panthi like Kabir.
good.
So that is why I am just going to tell a small anecdote here, just a deviation. See, I wrote an article on Lalleshwari when I was very young. I told you, I hadn't joined any job even. So I wrote an article, Lalleshwari or Kabir. It was published in a magazine. Then I found everybody afterwards writing on Lalleshwari and Kabir, and even getting their PhDs on Lalleshwari and Kabir, and saying practically nothing.
No creativity, no
Thing
research.
is, Lalleshwari anticipated Kabir in many things.
Yeah,
You
she.
see, the way she lashes out at external these rituals, outer rituals, the way she criticizes idol worship, the way she talks about this animal sacrifice.
Animal sacrifice, she talks very openly.
So
Why you do it? Hata
she
bata,
abhors
hata
she,
bata.
she, she
Why not?
abhors an animal sacrifice.
For that matter,
So
Nundaresh was also. For that matter, Nundaresh was also vegetarian. Nundaresh was a complete vegetarian. Nundaresh.
Nundesh was a complete vegetarian because, as his own biographers say, he
Yeah.
adopted the ways of Brahmins and Buddhists. He was influenced by them. I don't know how far this is true, but he wouldn't even eat the normal. Take a few. They would. Nuruddin tried to see when they plowed the land. They saw to it that no worm or no insect is killed. So this they got naturally from the
Because this,
tradition.
because that Rishi Parampara is Oriental. It's
Rishi,
Indian. It's
Rishi.
indigenous.
You
It's a
see,
Rishi
now there
Parampara.
are some people who call it Rishi. They don't write Rishi. They write Rishi. Rishi means people with bearded people. Now this is such funny
This
things
is
are
an
happening. But of course,
identity
our
crisis.
Rishi,
These are identity
our
crisis.
Rishi Muhammad, our Rishi Ahmad Rishi, he is very clearly, and he has also referred to Rum Rishi, the famous Lomash Rishi in Sanskrit. So he has referred to that.
And
It's a
I think
different thing.
his Shruk poetry also Shruk of Nandrishi, Shruk poetry.
Shuk is also patterned after
Watson,
Vak. Vak and
Wak,
Shuk are
Wak.
practically the same. Are
The Shruk
practically
has
the
a
same.
three
That is
liner.
why
Shruk has a three
that
liner.
is why
Shruk is a
no,
three
it's a
liner.
four liner. It's a four liner
Shruk is a four
like
liner.
that spark. It's a four liner. See,
Okay.
he has it's only Shuk means stroke, of course, as you know. But
Yeah.
it is again, and the influence of Lalleshwari, several Lalleshwari works have been adapted or taken as such by Nundrishi. He had a great impact of Lalleshwari. So
Le-
Nundrishi also wrote in the same meter, and but Lalleshwari perfected it. And as I told you, there are works in which she talks to herself, monologues. But
Monologues.
there are works in which she talks to her audience, talks to people, dialogue, and the way she addresses Mali. This is the beginning of intimacy. She would
Intimate
establish an intimacy with her audience.
Mali.
Unfortunately, though a great scholar, Pandit Anand Kaul, has translated this Mali in a very strange. He says, "Oh my father." He has translated it. Though Mali is an endearing term, it's an endearing term. But Pandit Anand Kaul, who wrote a good book, I mean, in those days, it can be
Scholar.
considered on Lalleshwari. It was published in research, this Royal Institute of Asian, whatever it was known, I don't remember. So it was published. The book was considered a good book, to be a good book. In fact, when I wrote my first book on the Lalleshwari, a small book on in Hindi, I studied Anand Kaul also because other people had not written their books at that time. So I studied Lalleshwari herself also, but I studied Anand Kaul in particular. But see how he has translated the word Mali. So
Mali.
Mali, the way Lalleshwari addressed people was, of course, to establish intimacy with her audience. She
It is in
knew
our
her
home.
audience. She
It is in
knew
our
her
home.
audience very well. She
It
knew
is
her
in our
audience.
homes also.
And
Homes also. Our elders call us Malya, Mola, Tala Mola,
yeah.
Malya.
So, but
It is a.
it doesn't mean oh father.
It doesn't mean father.
So anyhow,
Mole is a little.
I mean, it's common Kashmiri parlance. So
Yeah.
this is so she addresses her an audience and she knows her audience. That is why in several works of hers, she says, Yohai Vopadish Chui Bata.
You are Upadesh Chui
The,
Bata.
the ubiquitous Bata is everywhere there.
Bata is
She,
everywhere.
she addresses Batas because
Batas.
that was her audience. At that time, there was hardly any conversions, very few conversions,
Very
in
few
spite of
conversions.
in spite of Ali Shah Hamdani, who had to leave. I'm sorry to this thing, who had to leave there because there were very few conversions. He
And
couldn't.
then that particular that
Qutub Din followed what his Hindu subjects did. He went.
then
He
we have
performed. He
we have
performed
in this
a fire
Baris
sacrifice. He went
we
to
have
temple.
you have in this Baristani Shahi and Tafatul
So
Abab.
Din did the same thing. Qutb Din was, you see, almost he followed his subjects. And So
And
Lalita also,
I have heard also this thing that it took almost, especially I don't know the later period also, that it took almost 150 years, almost a century, to those converts to reconcile with the culture, the alien culture of Arabic culture or Iranian culture. They were not accustomed to. They were keeping their culture, Kashmiri Hindu culture,
no,
alive.
that is what the Baharistan Shahi also says, that they would sit, they would recite their own prayers.
They will not
See,
identify with them. Yeah.
with the Holy Quran, they would sit on the Holy Quran, and then they
Mhm.
would recite their own prayers. That's that's for several. But anyhow, we are not discussing that. Islam did come to Kashmir, and
And actually, it has its
for
influence
whatever
because there is,
reasons. But in
yeah,
Lalleshwari's time, she repeatedly refers to her audience as Bata.
bata
She
ship
admonishes them also. Who's kaskara hoot Bata? Again
hoot
Bata.
bata hata bata. He
So
says many a
hoot
times
Bata means a ritualist Bata.
ritualistic bata. I mean, satire is also there. There is also satire in her
So
language
that's what I'm
about the
going to
ritual.
say. So there
Yeah,
are monologues, there are dialogues in her works, and there are questions, there are answers, there is anger also, there is advice also. So this is a variety. It is not a monotonous walk.
monotonous nahi. It is a
She
work of a
changes
very,
her, she changes her mood also.
the
She
moods and
changes her
waves
the
of
way there are several tonalities.
tonalities as well. I mean, her
There are
life is similar.
involved.
Her life is similar to Akka Mahadevi. Similar to Akka Mahadevi, she is also a wanderer. She
Similar
also
in the sense that some people say that she walked about in the nude.
yeah,
Akka Mahadevi also walked about in the. She was
nude.
totally nude. She had her hair. She
She was
covered her.
against that. She was against her husband because her husband
But
was only interested
Akka
in her physical
Mahadevi
beauty.
was a very great poet, very forceful poet. I have read
Very
her
forceful.
translations. I have read translation by A.K. Ramanujan, that ace translator.
And she is
Ace
also Shavis.
translator.
Sir, she was also a Shavis. Mallikarjun. Mallikarjun, she was a lover, beloved of Mallikarjun. She always thought about Malika, but it was more of a
Mal-
Meera.
Malika
More
Arjun
of,
has been it has been translated by this. See, it is addressed to Shiva, it's
Shiva.
not a person.
Lord
It is
Shiva.
not a
Lord Shiva.
person.
No,
It's
it's not
addressed
about
to
Lord
Lord
Shiva.
Shiva.
She is in
Oh
love
my,
with Lord
oh
Shiva.
my, oh my, Shiva, white as jasmine. That's what it means. White as jasmine. This is how A.K. Ramanujan translates it. So she wrote, but and she was, her phrasing is quite violent at times.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
she writes about, she writes very clearly about man woman
She is a,
relationships.
she is a fierce
So,
at times. She is a fierce.
that's what some people say. Lalleshwari was a bhakta poet or a mystic poet, but she was not her mysticism was not bridal mysticism. She did not call herself the bride of Shiva.
No, no.
But
It was not. It was not. It
Akka
was not love for
Mahadevi
Sarika.
did say so that Shiva was her husband. She said
Yes,
that throw these mortal husbands into kitchen fire.
and
I
she
don't
finally
want
died.
them.
She finally
I,
died there at that place.
my
Srikakulam.
Shiva is one who does not die. So this is what she says in one of her
It's about
vachans.
the Meera also, like Meera also.
There
Meera
are
also made this. Meera.
there are Meera, but Meera is very clearly her mysticism is a bride mysticism. Her bhakti is she was her mental makeup was
Personified.
that of a bride. मेरे
Right.
जाके जाके सिर पे मोर मुकुट मेरो पति सोई very
Yeah.
clearly mentions it. Those
She mentioned.
people see, this is a feminist, you see, I don't know, jargon or what you say, that's bridal mysticism. I mean, a woman will write as a woman. She won't write as a man. This
He
is
will
what
write us.
is the difference. You talked of Sufi. Sufis write, when they write about this spiritual love or whatever you call it, as addressed to a man. This is the tradition in Urdu also. This came to Urdu from Persian. The lover or the
Persian,
beloved is addressed as male and not as female. And this is not the case here. A male is addressed as male, a female is addressed as female. So that's also what
no, we are,
proves that there was no Sufism there.
yeah, there was no Sufism. It is already contested, and I
There was
feel
no
very sad
Sufism.
when I
There, was,
see
there is
in
no
many
Sufi
many places,
terminology.
all
There
the
is no.
universities
See, that's good.
universities wherever there is a seat of Lalleshwari. Most of discussion is that she was a bridge between Shaivism and the Sufism.
See,
Lalleshwari was
this
a
is
bridge
what
between.
R.K. Parmu also says. See, she synthesized what is best in Hinduism and what is best in Islam. How did she sympathize? Where? In
Where?
which work?
What
Just
was the
give one
time?
evidence.
What was the
Professor
time? What was the era? But
Professor
the
J.L.
people.
Cole has very clearly pointed out that in not even in the so-called spurious works we find such a thing. Reference to Sufis or Sufism.
But
Not that
we
we
are
are.
already.
It doesn't mean that we are against Sufism, but
No, no.
not
Sufism is
necessarily in
very
a
good. Sufism
historical.
is very
We are
lovable.
just talking about a historical fact. The
I am
historical
fan of
fact is
Rumi. I am fan of
the,
Rumi. Yeah,
the
that is
fact
not a thing.
is that Sufi terminology cannot be found in Lalleshwari's works. Sufi style of addressing the beloved is not found in
Not
Lalleshwari's
not in
work.
Lalleshwari.
And then Lalleshwari is, you see, she did not intellectualize bhakti. Her poetry is basically philosophical. It's basically philosophical. She
Darshan.
tried
It's a
to
darshan.
basically
Darshan.
philosophical. And it is because the Shaiva she had before her, there were two great Shaiva poets in Sanskrit. This क्या नाम है उसका
Somananda.
नहीं
Somananda.
नहीं नहीं
Utpal Deva.
क्या उत्पल देव
Utpal Deva.
and
Abhinav Gupta also wrote. He
Utpal Dev and
Bhattanara.
Bhattanarayan wrote this is Tattva Chintamani. Tattva Chintamani, a scholar has called it see, a love poem in 120 verses. He has called it a love poem because he talks of the oneness of the unity of Shiva and Shakti as Prakash and Vimarsh. And
Prakash and Vimarsh.
so far as Utpal Dev is concerned, he says that even a moment without you is pain. And even one moment in your presence is, you see, happiness. So I don't want to be away from you for one moment even, because that'll go. So he talks in those terms. And Lalleshwari also, she has, there is a similarity in several of Lalleshwari's shlokas, Lalleshwari's works with the verses of Utpal Dev and Bhattanarayan. She says, Usum Pandit Panya Gare. So, Gati Rutum to Karma Sthap. So Gati Rutum means darkness. So this darkness is the darkness of mystic darkness, not dark night. So after which there is the night of undifferentiation. This is the night of differentiation. After which comes the light of
Dawn.
differentiation, undifferentiation. So Gati Rutum, this is what you see. Bhattanarayan also says at one place, you see, where are you fleeing? I have held you in my fist. This I'm translating it.
Yes, that's beautiful.
So he says to Shiva, why are you fleeing? Where are you going? I have held you in my fist. So this is how Lalleshwari, he takes several images from Bhattanarayan and from Utpal Dev. So, though she wrote 400 years after them, but there are many similarities so far as images are
The
concerned.
lineage is there. There is a scriptures are there. There's a
Images, images and
image
metaphors.
metaphors
Actually,
of the
all
similar.
Bhakti poet borrowed from a pool of metaphors, a pool of images, a pool of similes. They borrowed from, and it was a pan-Indian pool of
Pan Indian, it was certainly
images and metaphors.
Oriental, Oriental, Oriental.
So this is how that's why I told you about the word Sahaj. Lalleshwari writes about the Sahaj. Sahaja Shamto Damno Gache. So Sahaj, she writes at several places. The Sahaj is the same, or as I told you, of the Siddha poets, of the Sahajiya poets, who says he's spontaneous because they don't want to see any, they don't want to, she doesn't want to torment the body. And she says in one of her walks, Treshi Pachimo Krishna, don't torment your body with hunger and thirst. So she is against, and in fact, Kashmir Shaivism is against tormenting the body because the body and its senses are also, she also come from, are also, because the entire world is not separate from
It is
this
one. It's a one.
Shiva. The entire
Oneness.
world is a manifestation of Shiva. It is a work of art of Shiva.
That's
It's a
true.
painting of Shiva. It's not
Reflection.
separate. It is not. In
Reflection.
fact, that's why it's called Trika. The
Trika.
unity of
Trika Shastra.
Shiva, Shakti, and human being, man, the world. Shiva, Shiv Shakti Naratmakam Trika. Shiv Shakti and Nar, the man of the world, this whole phenomenal world, they are one.
Sir, I think we
So,
are heading now. We almost have exhausted our time of the program, and
or as you
we
please,
will
I
have
can.
another. We will have another program with you because I think
I,
there are.
I
We will have
I think
series
I
of
couldn't
programs.
say all that. I had to say many things, but I don't know. We lost some time because of
No,
problems
actually, I
that we
don't.
had
Yeah,
with
we
the
lost some time. Also, we
technical
lost.
problems.
We lost one channel also because of that. We lost one channel.
So,
The main
but
channel. The
two things I
main.
say. One thing I say that
Yeah.
Lalleshwari and other poets, they wrote in a Kashmiri which is quite different from what is called modern Kashmiri. Though this Grierson calls her language old Kashmiri. It is old Kashmiri. And they say that there are some archaic words in it. The archaic words prove that there was an earlier strata of language, a stratum of language.
Stratum of
So
language.
as I gave you an example from Pranasur Katha, so the language was approaching modern language. It was just evolving. And it is in this evolving language, in this emerging language, Kashmiri emerging as a modern language, that Lalleshwari must have composed her verses, not in the Persian laden language. For instance, at
No, no,
one
no,
place,
no. It is a mockery. It's a mockery.
at
No,
no,
it's a.
at one place, comes the word gil in Lalleshwari's verse, Gilipamposh, lotus blooming out of mud. Gil is an Arabic word for
There is
mud.
a
Kashmiri is rub.
rub.
How can she know the word Gil overnight? How could she have learned all that Persian and Arabic overnight?
And
Not
something.
even, not even Sheikh Nuruddin. I
No,
have
not yet.
noted down the language of words, vocabulary of both the poets. And as I told you about Sheikh Nuruddin, he writes a language I'm astonished.
English.
Turag, Turag for horse,
No, no. I mean, it was. I
Am
mean,
for mother.
sir,
He
you tell
writes a
me
language. They
after.
call it Sanskriti Kalam. It is not Sanskriti Kalam. It is his real Kalam.
It is almost a century and a 1.5 century had gone when Kutarani and all these last kingdom
And
had
one
gone. It
thing
was not
more
a
which,
much time space. Much
which I
time
could
space was
not,
not there.
one thing more that I could not dwell on today is that Lalleshwari is remembered to this day, is revered to this day, is popular, is phenomenally popular because of the fusion of the poet and the saint in her. She
Mystic.
was not a saint alone. She was not just Lalmaj or Laldad. Laldad is itself is a later word. It is basically Lalleshwari or Lal. She just says Lal. Maybe she may have been,
Lalleshwari, Lal,
her name may have been Lalita because
Lalita.
the pet name for the Lalita is Lal. So Lalleshwari also may also have been a later name. You see,
You were saying
but
she's
in
because
no case, that's what
you were
I
just
feel.
you were just saying
But
something about you were saying about
so
Laleshwari.
I was trying to say that we have to say that as a poet also she has written power packed
Okay.
verses which dazzle us. I have written at one place, they continue to dazzle us with their million-watt incandescence. So they continue to dazzle us with this is the note on which I stop.
Thank you.
Lalleshwari's works continue to dazzle us with their million-watt incandescence.
That's a
At least
beautiful.
whenever I read her, I feel that I have ventured into a new world of meanings.
Yes. That
It's a
is that
totally
is the
new meaning of meanings.
that is the that is the element of the eternal dynamics, which is in which her this whole
See, that's what a great poet
mythology is
does.
webbed. Yeah,
That is what I see identifies a
it is
great
dynamic. It
poet.
will change every time we see to it. It will change. It will find a different parameter.
Her
It's a
greatness
parallel.
is her
Yeah.
greatness is that she one or two sentences, not more, that
Yeah.
she made esoteric ideas
Esoteric. Yeah.
available to the common man. The common man may not have understood. The meaning may have eluded him, but the image sunk in. The image was so powerful.
Yes. It was from higher self. From
See,
higher self.
at last, at one place he says, oh, this Kesari one volume writ its shar. I dragged the lion from its den like a jackal. Just see what power it is. Just see what self confidence is it. She
Confidence.
began as a tormented soul. She began as a soul torn in self doubt,
Infested.
self
Infested.
doubt,
Yeah.
and
Self doubt. Yeah. There's a evolution.
insecurity, uncertainty. And
Uncertainty.
she ended as being a
Enlightened.
guru herself, as going a person who offer upadesh hoy, upadesh hoy bata. So see, from this insecurity and all that, as a
Evolution.
tormented poet, from a tormented poet, she became a person
Enlightened.
who would give
Enlightened
upadesh, advice, lesson, doctrine to people who would come near
oneself.
thousands to listen to her, to hear her works. So the works were, you see, instantly composed. They were not written, not only because she did not know how to reading and writing, but because they were instantly composed
Yes,
as a
that's true.
dialogue.
As a dialogue, as a
Thank you so much, sir.
conversation. Thank you, sir. It was pleasure talking to you. I think we had some technical issue. Our one channel is probably blocked. Two channels are going on.
Oh,
Probably
oh,
one
oh,
channel
oh.
is blocked because of that technical issue. But two channels are going on. It was recorded. I will see to it that I just extract it and put into the third channel again. Because of technical issue, it all things happen. Anyway, it was a great. I wanted to continue, but certainly we have time constraints, and we will continue. I think
I think it needs a sequel.
we'll do a sequel. But it will be well designed, and we'll do a only 40-minute sequel, maybe for around six
Because I
parts.
want to talk on her poetry.
We'll bring that. We'll bring that. We'll do one to one. We'll come from one to one to 2 poems, 3 poems, and we'll then have a discourse about the Grayson, also about your interpolation, about Hoske, and then we'll create something out of it because she is the wealth,
About the genealogy of Wak.
genealogy, Vak and Vatsun as well.
I
Vatsun and
want to talk about this.
yes.
So, I mean, anyhow, I don't know
So
the
anyway, it
program
was
went
pleasure.
today, how the program went today. I don't know
The
because
program
of
was
the
very good.
technical failures at.
Program was very good. It was only because one channel was blocked because of technical reason. So we lost many things there. It is on. It is on other channels. It is available. I'll see to it that I'll again collect it and put in that channel maybe. So it didn't go extempore
Sir,
everywhere, but it is recorded. It is well recorded. It doesn't matter. And I'm very thankful though you visited. It was your greatness and magnanimity. But before you go, I will not leave you. I want at least one particular poetry, contemporary poetry. You have translated Dinanath Nadim also. You have translated Akhtar Mayuddin also. You
no,
have
right
translated
now I don't have the translation with me because the book
any
is.
Krishanji Razdan.
See, no,
Uh,
because of the renovation of the house. See,
Chalo,
everything
anyway,
is in a
chalo,
mess
anyway,
here.
anyway,
So
I
I
was
don't
just
have the
using.
translations right now here, but I will next time. I will certainly come with one.
I will.
I personally met Dinanath Nadam for the translations. I
Great. That's
discussed the translations with him,
That's wonderful. That's
and I
that is
translated the very first poem. Instead, may I decide one small poem, translated poem, with the translation of Master Zindakar. Master Zindakar. I mean,
masters in the call.
if it is worth, I mean, if you allow me,
Yeah, please, sir.
he wrote one of the first one of his earlier poems was Narha.
Narha.
So I have translated it into Hindi. That was my first translation of a modern poet after Lal.
Okay.
दावा लाला रुखसा वदन की उसका आया जो ही ध्यान चिनगी सी पड़ गई जला मेरे मन का खलिहान रहा देखता मैं पल भर में हुआ कलेजा तप्त हृदय का धधक उठा हर भाग
Ah,
सॉरी जस्ट रहा देखता मैं पल भर में फैल गई वो ज्वाल हुआ
ah,
कलेजा तप्त हृदय का धधक उठा हर भाग शोर हुआ सब और अरे ये आग लगी है आग
Hi. Beautiful, beautiful, wonderful. I'm all Masters in the Call. I'm already only introduced his melancholic poetry about his son and other. I only know him through those poetry, but today you have
very good,
given a very
very good.
different dimension of his
You see,
persona.
he was a friend of my father's. That's how I knew him personally. I knew him personally. I would go
Thank
to
you.
him.
Thank you very much, sir. It was pleasure talking to you. Your magnanimity, we are honored.
Thank you.
This program, although it got blocked in one channel, but this will continue. This is recorded, and this is a
You
treasure
mean
for
that
us.
either your image didn't come or my image didn't come? What was it? My image was blocked.
No. It actually something happened at your laptop. It didn't work, and it disconnected
This problem,
everything.
I'm sorry.
And
That's
then
why
when you came
I
back
want
through
to.
another laptop, probably it didn't connect. Some technical issue happened. One main channel got
I,
blocked. Shitala conversation group got blocked.
I
I'll check
apologize
it up.
for it.
I'll
Next
check it.
time things will be different because, as I told you, because of renovation of how the house, see, things are not, even connections are not working here.
We'll go in for a series for you, sir. Thank you very much. Pleasure talking to you.
Thanks a
Thanks a
lot.
lot.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Namaskar.
you very much. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
So that was Dr. Shashishekhar Toshkhani, the legend, the scholar, the living legend. Sorry, due to some technical discrepancies in between, we could not continue. But then again, this is a recorded version now. You can watch it on YouTube and Sheetalnath Conversation page. If it doesn't work on the Sheetalnath Conversation public group, doesn't matter. We'll place it again there. and I hope you enjoyed this great discussion with a great scholar of eminence, a great living legend. Thank you very much. We'll be meeting next Sunday with another historic session. That's all. Best wishes. Good night.